Okay, we will open the city council work session Thursday, June 10th, 2 p.m. We need approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, talking specifically about one topic. But it came up just before we started that for those who are interested, the city council is not wearing their masks because we have new protocols here at City Hall. Bruce has lined them out and I believe they're available on the website.
They are on the each meeting page. I've added it on there, and we also have it posted on the door and at the entrance for the chambers.
There you go. So everybody knows now. Bruce, you want to get us started?
Yes, sir. I should have contacted you before, but what order do you want to go in? Do you want to start with staff? presentation?
Yeah. What we're going to do is going to go with the list of folks who have signed up on Zoom first.
Okay.
Then we're going to go with in-house. Anybody here who wishes to speak? Because Rusty then has the technical, shift that around a little bit. And after all that's done, we'll see if there's any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, that's fine. Fine, that makes sense. So I have nothing.
Well, the other thing is there potentially could be several, so let's keep it as brief as possible, but I'm not going to put on time limits.
I do, but there's no point doing it after everybody's.
So we jump right into it, or were we going to do a presentation?
Well, I have a presentation that talks about the kind of the background behind the discussion, and then also talking about 4 different ways that we looked to try to satisfy the funding requirements. So if you want to talk about that before, we can do that.
That's what I was thinking, just
Okay.
get everybody up to speed and on the same page.
Is up there, Rusty?
Hey, do you want me to start off?
Yeah, why don't you do that while Rusty's
Okay.
pulling it up?
I'll start off and then you. I'm gonna put center that way we can see on the camera.
There's the.
So I'm Mark Reckman, Fire Chief for Cannon Beach Fire District. To start this off, I'm gonna kind of kick off because I'm the one that really started kicking this going again. This conversation started back in May of 2019. And it started from our budget committee, actually kicking this off of funding, of how the district is funded. And one thing I want to answer real quick that I've heard a lot is a misconception. Cannon Beach Fire District is not funded by the city. The fire district is a completely separate taxing entity from the city of Cannon Beach. We don't receive tax revenue from the city of Cannon Beach. I am not a fire department, I'm a fire district. And so that needs to be clarified as I have understood the last week. The reason that I came to the city and started talking to food and beverage to the city of Cannon Beach was because the fire district does not have the authority on their own to do this. In ORS, it doesn't allow a fire district to do this. And so I came to the city with this proposal of doing this to increase funding without increasing taxes, property taxes. But I can't do it on my own. It has to be done by the city. And so that's why the fire district involved in this is because we can't do it on our own. So with that, I will turn it over to Bruce.
Thanks, Mark. This discussion, we'll start right in with how much money we're talking about. I think Mark has given a good segue into what we're doing. But the district identified needs of about $800,000 a year. And that number initially came from the fact that the district now, the tax rate is 89 cents per thousand. And the tax rate for the average fire district in this area is $1.35. And they can't really move that, the 89 cents, that's kind of set in stone. So they are able to do some levies, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the difference between what the 89 cents and the $1.35 generates was around $800,000. And so that was where the initial number came up. Mark has a presentation on the district's website, talks about decreasing response time for ambulance service, replacing outdated equipment, funding a fire marshal, and to hire some full-time staff to provide relief for volunteers. And that's not the entire list. The city also has emergency management needs. An example is the city's current City Hall Police Station is constructed with hollow block, and our slab is on a base of dirt and sawdust. One of my favorite examples is this wall right here is a bearing wall. It holds up the roof. If you go on the other side, there's bracing. It's not to hold up the roof, it's the roof holding up this wall because it's bowing and it's the wall that holds up the roof. The debt service for the replacement of a city hall like this, and again, there's been no decisions made as far as what would be included, but it's estimated between $700,000 and $800,000. So roughly the requirements are similar. We looked at 4 options for the funding. One is property tax. The second is tourist lodging tax, or the TLT. Another one was parking fees. And the fourth was a food and beverage type tax. The property tax is a possibility, but it doesn't work in the way that the chief came in and initially talked to the city. Both the city and the district will be able to hold referrals, they're called. It's a vote or an election to ask for the funding for their project needs. In the case of the district, however, if they were to get something approved, say we were able to make up the $800,000 or whatever the number is, that would be for 5 years. Then they would have to do it again and repeat it again. And Chief can talk about some of the difficulties of hiring staff when you can only tell them you'll be here for 3 years, 5 years, whatever. The district would be, again, the district would be limited to the 5-year requirement. The city could also go out and have a referral. Say we wanted to do, say, the infrastructure projects or a new city hall police station, and there would be, people would vote on a certain rate that they would be assessing themselves essentially for the full period of whatever the debt service was. So the debt service, I'm sorry, the property tax can work for both the district and the city, but that is 100% paid by property owners in Cannon Beach. And that's single home, businesses, hotels, whatever, they would all have a tax increase. The estimate on that tax increase is 5% for both the district and the city to match the $800,000 we were talking about. So if we were to get the $800,000 for the district and $800,000 for the city, that would be 1.6 million. Let me see, the 1% is equal to the, or I'm sorry, that is equal to a 5% increase and 1% of, I'm sorry, I gotta get my head right here. A 5% tax increase equals $64 per 100,000 in assessed value. And so you can figure from your assessed value what that cost might be. But again, it would be paid by all property owners in Cannon Beach. We also looked at the tourism lodging tax. So talking about some simple math here. Each 1% in the tourist lodging tax raises $572,000. However, if you look at the red line there, 70% is required to be spent on tourism-related purposes. So from the 572, there's $400,799 taken out for tourism-related purposes. It can be used to build convention centers, conference centers, pay for advertising, that sort of thing. But we have to pay that before the city gets to hold the money. And then the revenue available to the city is only 30% of the $572,000 or $171 or $171,000. sorry, I just lost my place here for a second. Because it's only $171,000, the tourism lodging tax would need to increase 4.5% for both the district and the city to come close to the $800,000 number. So the total for both would be 9%. Currently, the TLT, which pays, an awful lot of the current city budget, is only 8%. So we would be more than doubling the tax in order to be able to achieve the same amount of money. And who would pay it? Only people that were staying in lodging facilities would pay that particular tax. The next one is parking fees. And just doing some, again, quick math, there's 509 public parking places in the downtown area. Because we have excess parking much of the year, a good portion of the year, and then there's certain times when it's definitely overcrowded. Try to go ahead and enumerate what that time frame is. And we would need to generate $32 per day per space in order for that to generate the same amount of money. Who would pay? Day trippers, business owners and their employees, downtown shoppers, permanent residents, and second homeowners. If you were to look and say, well, let's not charge business owners or permanent residents, that number has to go up. You can't just say it'll be $32. That's if everybody pays. If you start pulling people out, the number has to go up for that space to equal that amount of revenue for those days. And finally, a food and beverage type tax. Food and beverage tax is a charge to the purchaser of prepared foods and not the restaurant or business. The district and the city commissioned a study to determine how much money might be able to come in from a food and beverage type tax. And the consultant estimated that 1% of a food and beverage tax would produce $431,590. Earlier, our staff had done an estimate and they came up and said that for each 1%, it would generate $212,000. We expect the truth is someplace in the middle. In that case, who would pay? It would be the individuals purchasing prepared foods. The consultant's estimate, as part of the study, estimated that 4% of the total revenue would be paid by locals, 96% would be paid by people coming from out of town. That's all I have.
Okay. So now we all have an idea what we're talking about, as if we didn't. We'll jump right into those folks who signed up on Zoom, trustees. So let's start with Daryl Kumasal.
Can you hear me?
Daryl, yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, and Rusty, will you be able to put up the slides that I sent in?
Yes, hold on a second here.
Okay, you can just go to the next page.
There we go.
So there's 3 issues that I wanted to discuss today. So the first one is really pointing at the city council. And I'm just asking that, this food and beverage tax has been discussed for 2 years. There have been analyst committee meetings, and now we've got the 3 public input sessions. So I think you're getting plenty of feedback from the residents and the businesses on how they feel about the food and beverage tax. I'm hoping that you guys can really just make a stand and decide on the issue and not try to push it off till November to put it to a vote potentially, but just, go with whatever you feel is the right thing to do. In general, the people of Cannon Beach have voted you into office so that you'll represent us. When you look at the numbers, really only 25% of all the residents even vote when it's a non-presidential election. So all of us people are really just the vocal minority who determines who's on the city council. If you vote a certain way and people don't like it, what's the worst that can happen? They're just gonna get mad at you and potentially vote you out of office. Or they might try to recall you if they're really pissed off. But I mean, that's the worst that can happen. At least you'll have made a decision and you'll be, happy with the decision you made. Personally, my wife and I are in favor of the food and beverage tax. But if you don't think that's the right decision, then our support is for the property taxes. Just charge the residents, charge the commercial businesses so that we can pay for the city hall, the police station, and for the fire department. I'm asking you guys to do what's best for the city. And the police, the city employees, they deserve better working conditions. Okay, next slide. Okay, for the second issue, I think that since we've been talking about the food and beverage tax, and it is controversial, I think we should try to extend an olive branch to these businesses who are pushing back. So what I'm suggesting is that you modify the ordinance and offer to rescind this resolution of having a food and beverage tax after 1 year if they can demonstrate that the revenues have dropped by more than 4%, right? They're saying that, by imposing this tax, they're going to lose money, lose customers. So I'm saying we can look at the quarterly revenues for the past 2 years, in addition to the year with the food and beverage tax. And if the majority of all the restaurants in Cannon Beach show revenue losses of more than 4%, let's rescind the tax and then just put in place the property taxes, and then we pay for that way. Okay. Third slide. So I just wanted to comment on some of the restaurant owners and workers' comments that I saw over the last few days. I guess their main claim is that the tax is going to cause a loss of patronage. So I just ran some quick numbers, and I just wanted to walk through these numbers so that you can see what the price is. So for every $10 spent, a 4% tax is equivalent to 40 cents. So if a party spends $100, that's $4 of their bill that they'd have to pay extra. If they tip 20%, they're going to tip $20 on their bill. So if they're not happy and they're not going to, they're essentially saying that by reducing their tip by $4, might hurt the servers, or they might just cut their tip down to $16. And again, that's on $100 spent. And to get some perspective, if someone drives in from Portland, it's 90 miles one way. So round trip's 180 miles. And if your car gets 20 miles per gallon, that's 9 gallons at $3.50 a gallon. So they're spending $31 just to drive to Cannon Beach. For someone living in Longview, Washington, 75 miles, so they're paying about $26 just to drive to Cannon Beach. So I mentioned Longview because for Washington State, they have a 6.5% sales tax, and prepared foods falls under the sales tax. So even if we have a 4% tax in Cannon Beach for food and beverage, it's still going to be a 1.5% cheaper than eating in their own state. And if we follow the logic of what these restaurant owners and workers are saying, it means that, let's say if you lived in Vancouver, most likely you're not going to want to eat in Vancouver because it's 6.5% more expensive than to just drive to Portland. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think Vancouver foods, people in Washington, the restaurants do just fine. People don't mind paying a little bit of a tax. And as a side note, I guess during the meeting on June 8th, the finance director, Lori, had mentioned that transient lodging taxes had increased 8% from 2019. So if you think about it, during 2020, while we had COVID, 8% more people were coming into town to stay, and obviously a lot of restaurants were closed or they could only offer takeout. But during COVID, we got an 8% increase overall in just lodging taxes. So ultimately, I guess, if you go to the next slide, I just want to give you some examples. Okay. So I just happened to pick these mainly because I guess in the comments, these owners and these workers had just mentioned, they had provided comments to the city council. So just as a reference, say I try to take the average cost of an entree item from any of these restaurants. So for like Ecola Seafood, a fish and chips platter is about $20. The tip on that's practically $4, and a 4% tip is $1. For Newman's, $36 for an entry. That tip would be, or the 20% tip would be $7.20. So $7 or $8, let's round up to 4% tax, $1.50. So in general, I mean, you get an idea that personally, I think if someone's going to go to Newman's and spend $36 on a single entree, paying $1.44 in food and beverage tax isn't going to be a big deal for that person. For that matter, someone at Ecola or Bill's Tavern or Voltano's where it's similar price, you're talking about $1 for every little entree. And just as a side note, I had just seen on the Newman's online menu, they can impose a 19% gratuity on parties of 6. So I guess my question would be is if this food and beverage tax is approved and customers aren't happy with it, would a restaurant like Newman's then allow the customers to reduce this automatic gratuity by 4%? I don't think they would. So I think overall it's just 4% is not much. And I don't think it's going to deter customers from coming to Cannon Beach. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Joe.
And next are the Beckons. Hello,
You guys hear us? Hello?
there we are. We're ready for you.
Okay, perfect. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
I'm CJ from Ecola Seafoods, and thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk. We are very supportive of the first responders and all the dedicated volunteers. We hope that the city can be flexible and understand what the restaurants have gone through this year. We have faced 3 major pressures. We were on the line of fire for all the pandemic restrictions and spur of the moment decisions and changes we had to make. Our customer expectations have not shifted as fast as our government recommendations. Things are not just going to go back to normal. I believe customers will continue to demand social distancing and other changes to feel comfortable. This limits our business. We don't know what the future is going to bring. What will happen in the winter if there are different COVID variances? Your decisions will have a long-term effect on our future. We are faced with a huge economic uncertainty. We have a huge labor shortage. The cost of hiring and retaining employees is way up. For example, McDonald's is paying $15 an hour. Minimum wage is going up in July. We have to pay a good wage with our employees, but our employees rely on tips. Our employees are concerned how this will affect them. Our margins are very small. Restaurant margins are generally very small. Our supply chain is facing many changes, not just increasing in pricing, but the ability to get product in a timely manner. For example, oysters have doubled in price in the last year and a half. We are increasing our prices to cover the product cost and labor cost. Adding this tax will contribute to sticker shock to our customers. Please do not pretend we have been in a very difficult situation. Please be economically business-minded when you make decisions that affect our livelihood for many years. There has to be other options that do not hurt the restaurant industry and that can provide our funding, our services. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, CJ. No questions.
Okay, and I am Shauna Beckman. I'm also with Ecola Seafoods. I'd like to start out by saying thank you for representing us as business owners and representing our community and our entire community. Like I said, I have been raised in this community, and this town is mine and my brother CJ's future. Just like others, I strongly agree that our first responders need additional funding. The term slow and steady wins the race needs to be considered when implementing such a huge change to our community. Please take time to consider all aspects of this ordinance and who it affects. Mainly being affected is the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry has already been through so much this last year and a half. I would like all of you to consider what we have and are still going through. Adding an additional change will absolutely put further strain on one of Cannon Beach's main industries. There are real costs to us to implement this tax. Not only am I already working from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. on payroll days just to make the floors covered and all of our book work is done, but in order to implement this system, this is what I estimate. I estimate that there's at least 40 hours at $50 an hour to convert our system to separate out thousands of combinations of items to which are taxed and which are not taxed. That's $2,000 in just our labor, and that's very conservative. Then I will have additional quarterly reporting if we use our bookkeeper to do this. Let's say 4 hours per month at $50 an hour, and she would calculate and stay on top of it. That's about $200 a month or $600 a quarter minimum. Then we have our point of sale system, which runs $100 an hour for support. Talking to our business support partner, they could not give me an estimate at this time, but suggested that they spent over 100 hours at $100 an hour implementing our QR code and our new online ordering system, because we have so many different types of products. All of our different products are such as retail gift items, grocery store items, restaurant prepared food items, and unprepared food items. If their suggestion is correct, it could run close to $10,000 in support time just for them to convert our system. And they said that's if our system can even support what we would be asking them to do. So in total, that is close to $15,000 in just the first year. And this does not include the cost to cover my floor shift when I'm working to implement the system, or the cost to explain to customers why we have a tax, slowing down our service and moving our line of customers. I'm asking you all to please consider the strain this will put on us, and please slow down and come up with a solution that works for our entire community. Thank you.
Okay, Shauna. No questions? Okay. Who's next? Is Dana Hammond.
Phone number? Yeah,
Oh yeah, 5757.
yeah. That's that phone number right there.
Okay. Dina?
Hi, guys. This is Deanna. Can you hear me?
Dina, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for listening to all of us today. And I'm with Cannon Beach Bakery. And I strongly object to this tax, and I am going to kind of emulate what CJ and Shauna said, in the fact that, you know, we've been pushed and pulled in every direction for month over month over month, and following the state's ever-changing rules, it's just been a lot for all of us. I've looked at, I'm a financial controller by trade. That's what I did for many years when I worked in the private industry. And I figured that just to update our system, it's going to be between $3,000 and $5,000. That's a quote I've gotten for our system for the little bakery. I think that the city, calculating the city tax or this food and beverage tax is going to take 1/4 FTE per year. So that's anywhere from $10,000 to probably $20,000 a year, depending on the caliber of employee that you need for your certain business. Again, it's almost impossible to find skilled labor at all, let alone someone that can even help implement these things. We've been working endless hours. And we're all at the very end of our rope. I think this is very bad timing. I think that COVID is, it's going to take everybody 3 to 5 years to recuperate from this, if they ever can recuperate from this. I know that many businesses aren't even coming back. This is just too much for us to take on right now. I personally feel like this is being done where in a fashion that we've all had our heads down trying to work to keep our businesses alive. And it was an easy way to skate this under the rug and just have it land. And that's a personal feeling. I don't mean that personally to anybody. So I don't really want anyone to take that way. But strongly opposed to this tax. We all need to be able to take a breath. And we don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring. You know, both Shauna and CJ talked about labor shortages and supply chain shortages. And that's true. I mean, you know, I know that I'm sure Bruce's and myself, just getting chocolate is almost impossible. You know, buying up everything you can. Those are just little things. Flour, the cost of everything going up. We've all got our own. We all make our money in different ways. I know that Daryl talked about, you know, people coming, you know, into our businesses and minimum average order prices and things like that. You know, I make my money $2 at a time. And when you, like Shauna said, start having these people, you know, ask questions. Why is there a tax? Why is this? They've been coming here for years. This has never happened before. It slows your line down. It's just too much for us all to take on at this time. And I'm really urging the city council and the mayor to please give us a break. We have a well-deserved break here and not pass this. Let's look at it again in a couple of years. You know, try doing a solution with some parking, something. There's got to be something, but the business owners just simply can't take it. It's too much. And so I thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Deanna. Next is David Johnson.
All right, sorry about that. I'm here. Hello.
Hi, David. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't have much of a presentation to present here. I do appreciate the time that you're taking to listen. I do support the projects that you're interested in completing. But I just agree with everything that's been said to this point by the other food and beverage business owners and operators, mostly being the timing of this. We're still operating at 50% capacity here in the restaurant. And, you know, that's costing us a lot of sales and revenue. And that's on top of what we lost over the last year and a half, which is immense. There was nobody in town for several months. It's been really, really difficult. So that's a big thing for me. Another major challenge would be just getting a system in place where we can account for this. I have an old point of sale system. It works perfect for ringing up pizzas, which is kind of an unusual order system because of all the different toppings and halves and all that kind of stuff. There really aren't new systems that I even like. I've looked at buying new ones, and it's not in my budget to do that right now. I can't ask my employees to hand figure this stuff order by order. There's just no way. And I don't really want to go buy a new point of sale system, which would probably be $10,000 plus, depending on what we want to do with it. There's also a lot of new headaches with those because mostly they're owned by credit card processing companies, and they're just a big hassle to deal with. I do believe that this would take money out of the pockets of hardworking employees that make a lot of their money by tips. I do believe that people, even our customers who are really happy to come and be here on vacation, are kind of just, everybody's just kind of fed up with everything and how tough it's been. And they can be grumpy, and extra expense does affect what they put in for a tip. Visitors to Cannon Beach do have other choices. There's other places to go. And I do think there are people that are sick of new taxes, fees, anything. And I think some people will decide to go other places because they have a lot of options. And our neighboring cities do not have a food tax beverage or food tax like this, to my understanding. I'm just gonna kind of leave it at that. There's a lot of talking points here, and I think that a lot of them have been covered, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. And again, I'm not against some of the progress that needs to be made here for the fire in the city. And I'm supportive of that, but I just don't think this is the way to do it. And I certainly don't think this is the time to do it. This scares me. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Okay, that concludes my list of those who signed up. So we're going to move to the room as soon as Dusty's ready. Go first, Jim? Or-
Do I have to? Okay. Well,
Wait a minute, wait, you need to come up to the,
Can you come up to the podium?
come up to the podium.
my dynamic is changing as you be speaking. It's like, wow. I got, you guys, poor Brandon, do I have to wear this?
Oh, good.
Are you vaccinated?
Your vaccination card, and then you can.
Okay, sure, thank you. I didn't realize that was.
Actually, I could vouch for him. We got vaccinated at the same time.
Same needle.
Yeah.
Oh, where is it? How about Rainy Day Barber? You know,
We also take Discover.
all right, I'll speak through it, but I haven't vaccinated.
Jim and I spoke a while back and we both talked about vaccination, so I can vouch for him also.
Please do so. I don't know. I had the same thing yesterday when I had to get a test and I couldn't find my, anyway, we'll talk about that later. When I first met Mr. St. Dennis, I thought we were going to have a honeymoon, and it didn't last very long. And and then of course the same way with Mark. He came to our little smokehouse, and we were retroing our little kitchen because it wasn't being very efficient. So Mark came to me, and 3 minutes into the conversation, he said, "Well, I want to get a hold of all the restaurant people and talk about how the restaurant people can help us out with our problems." And I'm thinking at the time, this is a guy picking cherries out of a nettle bush, And I'm sorry it's turned out that way. And I probably have said a few things prior to that hasn't been, Mark's favorite person. But that being said, I do take some of this personal, and I take where the council's going personal. I've been here 53 years. Been in the restaurant business 37, something like that, off and on, either primary ownership with Bill's 24 years, Brad Skeller 2, so there's 26 years. I would love to see an epiphany. I know all the people that work for the city. I see, quite frankly, I see a lot of malfunctioning. And it worries me. I would love for all of this to be tabled without personal protection grant programs. Last year, I would have lost $900,000. I've heard the numbers here. I question a lot of your numbers on parking. I question a lot of your numbers on going. I don't think there's been true transparency in looking at every possible means, bending every possible elbow to get their goal. But Dave Rouse, years ago when I was on school board, my son was in theater. And we were talking about school board measures. How are you gonna go from A to B, and how are you gonna get these beautiful facilities? And I told him, boy, my son would, he turned out to be a theater arts major, University of Oregon. I said, wouldn't it be nice if we had an auditorium? Where the kids could actually be able to produce plays that's professionally done. And he said, well, Jim, you got to realize we live in small communities, and people in these small communities need to live within their means without taxing your people to the point of absurdity, because you put a performing arts center into a big bond measure, you're probably going to lose your bond measure. And they said, Dave, that's the best advice I've ever heard. So the new school doesn't have a performing arts center. That being said, that's where I'm coming with all of this. I think, Robin, I really like what you said about, let's go back and see what we can do within our means. We're trying to drive a Tesla on a Chevrolet budget. And those of us who are hurting to death, everything that's been said before is true. I can see people coming in and rationalizing how this isn't going to hurt the restaurant industry. I can guarantee you it will. I've got here just in 2 days, 40 restaurants. To date, while I've been here, I got two messages from my son. I'm pushing 200 signatures of people in the restaurant industry. You give me another 3 weeks, I'll have 400 or 500. These are people that live in town who have signed. I'll present this to you, Sam. You give me a couple of weeks. I think we're going the wrong direction. It's up to you to change it, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Crystal, did you wish to say something? No? Jim?
No, not today. I just wanted to be here and be available with any questions from the chamber's perspective.
Okay. Do we know if there's anybody waiting outside or hanging around? Okay, at that point, let's open it up to the Zoom list. And if somebody has their hand raised, Paul, I see. Oh, Paul, to Corporal.
Excuse me, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. Hello, Jim.
How's that?
Hi, Paul.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think he muted himself again.
You just muted.
Paul, I think you're still muted.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay. Wow, technology is great for me. Hey, it feels like we're having a sales tax question that's being applied to one business, and that's restaurants. I don't feel that's right. I think if you're going to do a sales tax, you should offer it to the galleries, the clothing stores, the theaters, the service stations, the surf shops, the real estate people, the doggy stores, the construction companies, the sign shops, and even the marijuana shops. I don't believe this is a good time for any tax. We're just received 11% increase in our back of the house labor, and the state has put it on another 5% increase on our front of the house labor. As the kids from the fish store, oysters just went up again. The red meats are going up. The seafood went from like $25 for a pound of crab to almost $39. I don't see how we can keep raising our restaurant prices to cover this new business of being out of stock and prices being so high and labor being so high. We're all going to take a big, huge hit on sales, on not being able to charge enough, and throwing a tax on top of that for the guests to pay will keep them away. That's all I have, folks. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
Looks like we have another
Okay,
Jason.
Jason and Liz. You're on.
What's the last name?
Menke.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Jason. Yes, we can.
Hi, thanks. This is Jason Menke with Sea Level Bakery and Coffee. And I did, I sent in a letter to some of the counselors, and I just also just kind of wanted to just briefly hit on some of our major concerns with this tax. And it's mainly due to the timing of it. It's just, as been said already, the timing is just incredibly hard to understand that we're having to discuss this right now. And this is the first that it's really been discussed as far as I know. We're just barely coming up for air at this point, and we don't know what the future brings. There's been so much change that we've all had to implement. Not to mention the extreme lack of labor right now has a lot of us, questioning how are we going to make this happen? And what's being talked about is just increasing our labor needs. And we're not, like, we're already closed 2 days a week because there's not enough people to work. I also share the concerns of all of our cost of goods sold are going up right now, which means we're going to need to, and our labor costs are going up, which means we are going to need to raise our prices. And adding on a tax onto that, it's going to make an impact. It's just a matter of how big of an impact I think it will be. Some of our other major concerns are having to be kind of the front lines for a very unique tax at a time when people are already quite confrontational. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to raise their little yellow hand? Chip.
I have a mouse is dying on my machine here.
Uh-oh, we're technical issue.
Oh.
You could grab a battery if you would.
Let's take a 5-minute break before we jump to Chip and let Rusty sort some stuff out.
I've got bricks on this.
Connected up here for you.
On my iPad.
Okay. Hi, Chip.
Hi, everybody. I appreciate you doing this and having a conversation about this and listening to some of the restaurant owners and not just members of the budget committee, which I don't know if it was pointed out that the first person is actually a member of the budget committee. I want to reiterate 3 things that I think need to be heard by everybody on the city council. You've heard several people talk about the timing. The timing is really bad. The reason why the timing is bad is because most of us operated in the red last year. And so we are still trying to recoup losses. As a matter of fact, remember, we are still not at 100% capacity. Like the previous speaker, not only are we not at 100% capacity, we can't even be open 7 days because we can't find the staff. So I just think the timing, as a matter of fact, when it comes to timing, I mean, take the time to identify some other solutions to this particular problem. So the first thing is timing, but the second thing is fairness, which to me is actually the biggest issue that we're facing in this discussion. we are talking about taking roughly 27 restaurants, I think, 27 establishments. Do I have that number correct?
I think so.
I'm sorry?
I think you're right.
Yeah. So we're talking about trying to fund this on the backs of 27 businesses, on the backs of 27 families. Now, the fact is, you mentioned, I know people, Bruce, either you or Daryl mentioned the notion of parking spaces, saying we have 500 parking spaces, and how the numbers were different. Well, here's what I'd say in terms of fairness. If there's a $10 fee for parking spaces and there's 500 parking spaces, that's $5,000. If they roll over twice, that's $10,000 a day. If there is a day use fee for people who are not locals to come in and park, that's even more. And the fact is that's considerably more fair because it's not just targeting 27 business. It's also not just targeting those who come in and eat at the restaurants, but it's asking everybody who comes in to enjoy Cannon Beach to come in and participate, for everybody who comes in to park here. I recognize the issue of we're trying to find some kind of a simple solution. I would point out that our representative from the fire department who was there noted that they were trying to find a way, and I wrote this down, his quote, to pay this without increasing taxes. Well, I'm sorry, that this is not the solution if you're trying to do it without increasing taxes. Actually, this is a sales tax and you are increasing taxes. Daryl noted that people don't mind paying a little bit of a tax, to which, as a business owner, a guy who owns 5 businesses, I would say, really? Who are his customers that don't mind paying a little bit of a tax? I suppose if everybody in the city or in the county doesn't mind paying a little bit of a tax, then let's spread it around and not put it on 27 businesses. So I just, again, timing and fairness are the 2 big issues to me. I really do appreciate all of you being willing to listen to this, because this is not just the 27 restaurant owners. It's also the people who work for us and all of us who are trying to make a living after the terrible last 18 months we've had. So thanks.
Thank you, Chip. Okay. Did we have another one? Anybody on Zoom wishes to raise their hand, they may do so. Last chance. Okay, I want to thank everybody who spoke. This is the information that we were needing from the restaurant folks. I will remind everybody that on the 16th at 6 p.m., we will have another public input for anybody who wishes to speak. That includes restaurants as well as public residents or other businesses, whoever. We have another meeting on Saturday, the 19th at 10 a.m. for those who need a morning shot and a weekend. So those 2 are scheduled. If we keep getting input, we'll schedule another one after that. We are also, we welcome also your letters of comments, pro or con, whatever. They have been streaming in pretty steadily, and Jennifer is trying to keep track of them all for us. So I thank you all for whoever has sent stuff in already. At that, council, if there's any comments you wish to make, or staff? No?
One thing that was brought up to me today was that 2 o'clock might have been a difficult time for the restaurant people to get together. And so I'd like to hear a little more from them. I see Jim nodding, that maybe there might be a better time that we haven't picked yet to allow people who can't do it now to speak. Jim, did you have a time that you thought might be better?
When we did our meeting, we did it at 2:00 because getting restaurant tours together to have an industry discussion or anything is difficult because every restaurant has a different focus. If you have a breakfast restaurant, you're busy in the morning. If you have a lunch restaurant, you're busy in the afternoon. If you're doing dinner, you're busy in the evening. So picking a time that works for everyone is incredibly difficult. And 2:00 is kind of after the lunch, and before the dinner rush, so that seems to be, in my mind, in my years of working in the restaurant, that would be probably the most beneficial time that most people would be free, but certainly doesn't cover everybody. So I like the different times that you have because that will give people the opportunity, hopefully, to give their input.
If you hear about any other timing that we don't have, let us know so we can do that.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate the fact that if you really can't present during one of our meetings, please send us a letter, an email. That is still a very good way to let us know what you're thinking. With that, I will close this presentation, public hearing, and we will, anything for good of the order? Nothing. Okay, we are adjourned and thank you.